what I felt was how limiting the traditional education model is for families that are more globally minded. We wanted more meaningful experiences, not just for our kids, but for our family as a unit.
Welcome to Mindblowers, the podcast where we explore ideas that shape tomorrow. Today's episode is about the future of education, the future of family life, and the end of being tied to a single place. For more than 100 years, school and work have held us in place. The same building, the same calendar, the same routine, but the digital age is changing that, and AI is about to accelerate the shift. Remote work was just the beginning. Now families can work, live, and even educate their children from anywhere. Our guest today is Rekha Magon, co-founder of Boundless Life, a global education movement that allows families to live around the world, from Portugal to Bali to Uruguay, relocating every 3 months while children attend a connected network of holistic microschools. Boundless is more than a school. It's a blueprint for a new kind of life. As AI personalizes learning and as VR opens up virtual classrooms and workplaces, we're heading toward a world where geographic independence is not just possible, it's normal. So what if your family could live a truly boundless life? That's today's question on Mindblowers. Welcome to the Mindblowers podcast. Today we are going to talk about the future of education, and I think in many ways the future of family lifestyle. With me, I have Rekha Magon. I hope I got that right.
You did, yes.
Oh, perfect. Well, thank you for being here. Can you tell me a little bit more about what you're doing and what gave you the idea for your school?
Sure. Myself, we used to travel a lot with our children when they were young. And I think living abroad with our own family really opened our eyes to what I felt was how limiting the traditional education model is for families that are more globally minded. We wanted more meaningful experiences, not just for our kids, but for our family as a unit. Continuity and our current systems around the world, especially around education, just aren't built for that. So I'd say Boundless was born, out of realizing that gap that we need to create a more integrated lifestyle where families can learn, they can work, and they can have these global experiences all together in the lifestyle that they live.
Yeah, it's interesting. I myself have kind of jumped out of the rat race or hamster wheel but I noticed that you enter a new hamster wheel, which is kind of the boundaries that the school system sets for the freedom you have with your children, right? You're pretty much bound to one place in the traditional setting. So I guess that is the core of what Boundless solves, I guess, that you can travel around and your kids can experience the same school, but in different places, correct?
Correct. Yeah, exactly. What we do is, I would define it as like a turnkey solution for families who want to live abroad and still have that continuity for their family. So we're currently in 7 locations around the world. And what you get when you stay at a Boundless location is, a fully furnished apartment that's kid friendly and stocked up in a way that you need to be able to live comfortably for 3 months as a family. We provide a co-working space where families who, are working remotely can go and work from. That's walking distance from our apartments. We provide experiences for families so that they can have a deeper immersion into the culture, the local language, and everything that there is to see and do in that new country. And then the biggest value proposition we offer is a school. We call it an education center. It's a brick and mortar micro school where we hire international teachers alongside some local teachers, and children get a full on education that then continues regardless of what Boundless location they're in. There's that continuity, that common thread between the education centers.
And did you start with one place and then expand it, or did you kind of start with several locations at once?
No, we started with one. I mean, the plan was always to open many, but our first location, which we opened about 3.5 years ago, was in Portugal. So we opened in a small town called Sintra. And that was our very first location. We had, I think, 9 families registered at that point, who were the wild ones who kind of believed us when we all we had was a deck and an idea. Some of those families are still with us today at different locations, which is so nice. So we started off with Sintra. That was our first location. Later on in that year, we opened a location in Greece. So we're on a small island called Siros. Then we opened in Tuscany, a small town called Pistoia. Then we opened up in Bali. So we went to the other side of the world and hit Asia. Then we opened in Montenegro, where I'm calling from right now. We're in a town called Kotor. And then we also recently opened in Spain earlier this year in Estepona. And then in April, we just opened in South America. So, first time we have a South American location. We're in Uruguay. So those are the 7 countries we're in, and we're excited to be working on Japan next, which will hopefully launch in early 2026.
Most of the families who are in the school, I guess the kids are in the school, and the families enjoy the locations. Do they travel around to several different locations during a year, or what is the normal model?
Yeah, I think families use Boundless the way that best suits their own lifestyle. So we have some families who pull their kids out of traditional school for an entire year and do a year abroad with Boundless, and every 3 months go to a different location. We have other families who are reoccurring every April. So they'll do the 3 month cohort. Every year, they'll choose a new destination and kind of end their child's school year with Boundless. So we have the way it's kind of divided is we have 3 3-month cohorts that are academic and represent a full school year. And then we also have summer programs, which is 1 month in July, 1 month in August, that serves more like a summer camp abroad. So families who maybe aren't ready to leave the traditional system or but want to live abroad during the summers, they join us and register their kids in our summer camp and get to live abroad for a month. So I would say it varies. Some families are all in and go from destination to destination. Others, pick a few 6 months a year to do a destination. Others come and go. That's usually how families kind of roll it out.
Some families, they decide to have their children in an ordinary school, but then they kind of take the last semester off and join Boundless.
Correct. Yeah, we have a kind of a big group of families that register their kids in normal school in September and then pull them out for the last 2 3 months and do a boundless cohort with us to end the year.
Interesting. So, this podcast is very much about the future and how we think that artificial intelligence and digital transformation is in general impacting society. So, how much do you see kind of the demand for your school? How much is that driven by technology and the ability to work from anywhere?
Yeah, I mean, we launched Boundless during COVID, actually, towards the end of COVID. And the reason we did so is we realized, hey, there's so many people now who can work remotely. They've been mandated to work from anywhere. They're not going into the office. So many kids are doing virtual school. And I think it was also the first time that parents got this, I would say, like front row seat to what their kids actually do on a daily basis by having them at home on a screen, seeing what the lessons look like. And it was a really pivotal moment, I think, in the world for people to kind of relook and revalue how they want to live their life. Do they want to go back to the kind of rat race of how they were living before the pandemic? It was like almost this opportunity to choose to live differently because it was such a shake in the world. So we launched Boundless at that time where so many people were working remotely and still are. And families were looking for an alternative mode of education. So I think that on its own is what sprouted the beginnings of Boundless. Now, in terms of AI and how the world is shifting, um, I think it's becoming really clear that content is no longer the king. There's access to information is instant for everybody of all ages. Kids, what they need to actually be learning is how to think critically, how to navigate complexity, how they can adapt in a world that is going to be shaped, if not already is, by AI, and also have kind of global mobility. So, to us, we believe really that emotional intelligence, resilience, cultural fluency, all of these soft skills of being able to negotiate and communicate effectively are what the core competencies our kids need to go into this unknown future. I mean, even in terms of, universities, they're looking more for portfolio work, right? They're not as interested in grades anymore. They want to know, what have kids done? What projects have they worked on? How have they given back? What experiences have they had? And Boundless allows children to build real evidence of those skills and that impact, by all the different projects that they work on.
So can you help me understand, like an ordinary school, I still see there's a lot of structure. Like my kids' schools, they still like have English, they have math, history, geography, and it's not that different from when I went to school, I guess 45 years ago. Um, so how is Boundless different there? Do you still kind of have like 1 hour of each subject and homework and on, or do you work in a different way?
Yeah, great question. So when we initially launched Boundless, we definitely wanted an alternative approach to education, but at the same time, we didn't want to use, all the Boundless students as guinea pigs to try something different. So what we did is we partnered with a Finnish school development company in the early days. We were very much inspired by the Finnish principles that have, for years been proven to show great success, and they focus on well-being, on curiosity, creativity, and really developing the whole child in a more holistic way. So we modeled Boundless Education around some of the principles of the Finnish education system. So there's less memorization and a lot more focus on skills that matter. And we do that through project-based learning. So all of our locations are working on a project. They still learn their math and their English, but once they've learned the core subjects, it's implemented into a real world problem. So we base our project based units on the UN Sustainable Development Goals. We call them quests. So the children are applying their academic knowledge, but to solve a real world problem. And I firmly believe, and have seen it now firsthand, that when students are engaged in a real world project that's tied to that place, that's tied to that environment that they will have a direct impact on, and they can see how their learning is relevant and purposeful because they're applying it, that is the learning that sticks, right? Those are the experiences and the knowledge that stays with you in a much deeper, impactful way, rather than learning for a standardized test where you memorize all this information, and the second the test is over, at least for me, all that knowledge is out the window because you were learning just to pass a test and not really to apply it to the real world. So to me, the future of learning is building that thoughtfulness, that adaptability, and the emotional intelligence that humans can have, that AI cannot. So really focusing on those future skills that are often not emphasized in traditional schools.
Do you think in the future it will be possible to create even more flexibility for children? I'm thinking a little bit when you look at, for example, tech companies, they would say, if you want to go to the gym in the middle of the day or even sleep in the middle of the day, be our guest. You can sleep here. We have the gym here. So pretty much you can design your own workday. But today in schools, it's pretty rigid. you need to follow 20 other students, and it will not be in your own tempo. Do you have any thoughts on kind of how can we optimize this for children in the future?
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's one of the biggest constraints I think of just our entire society is that a child is a family, not even just a child, right? The whole family unit becomes stuck for 18 years in one location until they have to, finish theirs. That makes to me makes no sense. How can we restrict families living and how they approach life to a brick and mortar school? So I think with the organizations like ourselves, like Boundless Life, that's allowing families to have the flexibility to move to different locations. That will have a huge impact on um, families being able to break free of that. I would feel like cage that we're kind of stuck in with the traditional system. And I think with the emergence of AI and the amazing personalization that can happen when it comes to learning and education, I believe, the future of education is going to be completely flexible, right? Where kids can have, a tutor at their fingertips no matter where they are, what they're doing, and can get that one-on-one personalized education that I think is, the best when you have someone really catering to your needs and filling the gaps that you might have and meeting the child where they're at. With AI, we can do that now. So that kind of untethers a child or a family from a location and gives them the freedom to be able to move around. And I think with more organizations like ourselves that are building community and projects and allowing kids to have that social interaction and applying the knowledge that they might learn from AI but into a real world setting, that's what the future of education will look like in my eyes.
Can you kind of paint a picture of some of the families who are kind of all in with Boundless Life? How, a year would look like for them in terms of, what locations would they go to? How would their life look different between compared to the ordinary family?
Sure. I mean, I can give you an example of like the kind of the program I'm in right now. Um, we launched this September. It was the first time we've always serviced kids between the ages of 1 and 12. And this school year was the first time we opened a program for middle schoolers. So we expanded our reach to 13 and 14-year-olds. And we had 20 families sign up for an entire school year for their children. So there were 20 kids ages 13 to 14. And together we all started in Bali. So we spent 3 months together in Bali. Then we all moved to Greece. We spent 3 months together in Siros, in Greece, and then we all moved here to Kotor in Montenegro. And these families, we've all been together for it will be 9 months next week. At the end of this week, we're wrapping up this year, and I mean, what a magical experience it's been. Teenagers are always trickier to deal with than the younger ones because they need as as a child transitions to the age of 13, their peer group becomes the focal point of kind of their identity and they start, stepping away from that parental unit. So it's been amazing to see this tight peer group of 20 young teenagers travel together, live together, build community together across 3 different countries. It's become honestly like a massive family every day. The kids are running in and out of our apartments. They're going to play soccer together. They're having traveling together. They're learning new languages. They're making friends with all the locals. And it's really become this tight knit family where you don't have to worry as a parent where your kid is. They're part of this very safe, tight ecosystem where they all have each other's back. We're kind of co-parenting as we go. There could be 12 kids in my house this afternoon, hanging out, and then the next day they're at someone else's house or they're at the beach. But it's become this very safe environment where everyone is growing, expanding together, and there's a ton of weekend trips happening, and um, you know, peer learning, parents sharing their knowledge with other kids. It's a really beautiful ecosystem of community that kind of goes beyond just the education offering.
So one thing I was thinking about, you mentioned that teenagers can be more challenging to deal with. Do you have experiences where one of them might have gotten a boy or girlfriend in one location, and the parents would then want to move on to the next location, and the children would be like, no, 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 we're not going anywhere?
Yeah, great question. I think we did experience, yeah. Again, this is the first time we're dealing with teenagers. There was one, boy who had kind of fallen for a girl in one location. But surprisingly, they were very. I remember their parting, and when they said goodbye to each other at the end of the 3 months in Greece, it was very courted. It was very sweet. It was very like I think they both just understood that, hey, we live in different countries and we have to, part. They were very mature about it, surprisingly. I remember asking the parents, I'm like, "Oh my god, how are they doing? They must be so sad to be parting." But they were, I think, with this type of lifestyle, to be honest, the kids become so much more adaptable and resilient because it's just part of the rhythm of the everyday, right? You don't know what experience you're gonna have next. You're constantly having these shared new experiences that it builds this deeper sense of adaptability and resilience, I find, in the children more so than the parents, of the group, because this has just become their norm. So I think in situations like that, they're actually able to cope much better than, we would, I think, in a similar scenario, because they've built this muscle of adaptability from a young age.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have two children, and the oldest is now 11, and we are living in the fourth country now. And both our kids, when we moved now to Cyprus, they said, "So how many years are we going to stay here?" Like it was kind of an impossibility that that we would actually settle down. That life is kind of a process of moving and experiencing different things. Uh, but I think for most people, you must encounter people saying, saying this is impossible for us, you know, without it actually being physically impossible, but mindset wise, that they don't think it's possible. Do you face that a lot?
Yeah, I mean, I think, fear is at the root of everything. Whether it's trying something new, a new exercise, or a new experience. What holds us back as humans is fear, and I think that's deeply rooted in our entire society. People are scared to take that first step and to try something new, to try walking down an unbeaten path requires um, someone to be bold and, courageous. It takes a lot of courage. And I think th- that's something that makes our community so special, to be honest, because everybody who's here, I think we're over now 1,200 families who have joined Boundless in the last 3 years. And I would say that everyone that I've shared a cohort with um, has so much to teach you, or you have so much to learn from, because there are people who have kind of taken that step, are courageous enough to try something different and to push through that fear that all of us have. We all have some level of fear in us. Even when you're on the path, you still have this like, "Oh, am I doing the right thing?" But I think being amongst so many like-minded individuals who are bold enough to walk a different path, to try a different lifestyle, is so invigorating and inspiring. It almost feels like you're learning on a daily basis just amongst the peers that you're with in a cohort. So, yes, I think fear is definitely a huge factor for so many people. But it is so beautiful to spend time with people who go beyond the fear and take that next step. I think, every possibility is just on the other side of that feeling of fear. And if we can model that for our own kids that, hey, this is scary. This is this is territory I've never done before. It's outside my comfort zone. But you can show them that you take that first step and are willing to step into the uncomfortable zone. To me, that's where all the growth and all the possibilities lie. So it's beautiful to take that step yourself, not only to model it for your children, but then to also be amongst a peer group that has taken that step is so inspiring and so invigorating. It makes you want to try something even more different and, go beyond the fears that might still be inside of you even as you're living this lifestyle.
So looking ahead, maybe 10 years, how much innovation do you think we're going to see in the in the education system? I mean, do you expect to see many different models, maybe some similar to Boundless, or do you think most people will still have an education that looks like what we have today?
I think education is going to change dramatically. I mean, just what we can see AI does today shows how much how much possibility there is to relook at everything in the world. So I think education will be um, very mobile. It will be flexible. It will be personalized to each individual child. Children can work at their own rates to get through material. They can fill gaps a lot quicker. The tricky part, and I think even we're solving for, and many other organizations will as well, is how do we add that real life element? How do we build in these soft skills? How do we give them the competencies to expand and grow beyond an AI bot? That is where we're going to really need to focus our energy, whether it's Boundless or other organizations, to make sure that we are mindfully and intentionally building solutions that work and that develop the whole child and develop them socially, um, allow them to connect, to different cultures, to be able to be more of a global citizen, to empathize with different cultures that are different than themselves. To me, that's where the focus needs to go. And I think it'll be a completely different world very soon when it comes to education. It's just a matter of when you jump in and how long it takes people to jump into that.
So how do you see a possible mix being? I'm thinking of like some learning is obviously social. The kids sit together and they interact. Other learning can be with an AI bot, I suppose, individually or within a group. You could have virtual reality learning where you're in a different location. And you could have the traditional learning with a teacher at a blackboard. Um, or you could have some form of combination of, let's say, YouTube and AI that kind of directs you to different videos. Do you think it will be very personalized how you kind of put that together? Or how do you look at evolving Boundless to in the next, let's say, 5, 10 years to kind of use all these tools?
Yeah. I think, AI on its own, like I mentioned, can be leveraged to personalize each child's learning journey, right? So, I the biggest example I always give is any parent who has more than one child has seen how, even with the same conditions, the same environment, the same genes, the same upbringing, each child is so unique and so different, right? But our traditional system educates every child the exact same way depending on what year they were born in. To me makes no sense. Now with AI, we can actually get to a level where we're personalizing education to meet every child where they're at. That is, beautiful and so powerful. However, I still believe in interaction. I think a teacher's role is still important, but I think the focus of a teacher can change rather than the teacher being the one who has all the knowledge and has to impart the knowledge on the child. I see teachers and educators being more of a coach, more of a mentor, how to mentally, help a child set goals. How do they achieve those goals? How do they push through their own fears? How can they make plans and be able to stick to it? How can they overcome their own challenges? So I see the role of a teacher, which I still think is very crucial. You need, mentors in your life, people that you can guide you and can be that voice of reason when you're struggling. I think they still need to exist in the education model, but their responsibility and their role will shift to being more of a coach, more of a guide, more of a mentor to keep them motivated, engaged, and on track and hold them accountable to what it is they need to do. And then to just, yeah, be that kind of collaborator to help bring people together, help bring content together, help bring projects to life. um, I would love to see, and I mean, we're doing a lot of this right now already, but love to see kids outside the classroom, right? Like, yes, you learn whatever you need to learn when you're on the screen, but the rest of the if you can get that done in, a short amount of time, that frees up 6, 7 hours of your day where classes can be outdoors. They're out of the classroom, they're in the community, they're working with local businesses, they're, visiting different museums, they're creating solutions for problems. And, you know, to me, this is a world where the world itself becomes a classroom. You don't need those four walls to learn. You can learn from anywhere, and you can actually take time to leverage the places that we're in for learning.
Have you faced any resistance from the established education? Like what I'm thinking is, for example, some professors I've noticed they say, no, there's no way we will change one of the books, maybe because they wrote them themselves and has an income stream from that book. Um, I've also seen with AI, for example, in Denmark, I've talked to some teachers where I said, would you like to learn more about AI? And they would say, no, I would like to learn how I can stop students from using AI. I don't want to learn AI myself. So, like a very kind of conservative approach where they would try to resist change. But do you, with Boundless, do you face any resistance from the education system itself?
I mean, to be honest, like my first company that before I worked on Boundless was years ago. I built a mindfulness solution to bring into public schools, and I was very passionate about social and emotional learning. The product was great; it was giving good traction. But when my own child, I sent my son to kindergarten in the first year, and it just hit me so quickly when he entered the system, is that what I felt was it's almost it's it, you you cannot change a system by adding different tools to it. That's what I was kind of doing. I thought, oh, I'm making an impact on education. I'm building a solution that will add on to the traditional system. When I experienced my own child going to this system and realized what I felt was such an like nothing had changed, right, in the last 30 years since I was in that same seat. So I felt at my core that if I wanted to really make an impact in education, we had to start from the ground up. We had to rebuild, we had to reimagine, we had to completely start fresh. So, with everything we're doing, to be honest, we're not really integrating with the traditional system. We've built our own model. When we build our education centers in different countries, this is why we don't call them schools, because we're not adhering to each country's educational philosophies or what they need to be educated. We are sticking to our boundless education model, and really reimagining what learning looks like. So I think it would be very difficult to try to go into a system and change it. Um, and to me, kind of the only option was to start from the ground up and just reimagine.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to avoid that resistance. But how about then if you have somebody who is studying with Boundless and let's say they need to take the step to high school or later university? Uh, would there be any question marks around whether they would have the educational background to start an education?
Yeah, sure. So we are already in the process of getting Boundless Education accredited. So we're working with a worldwide accreditation association called WASC. So WASC has been working with us for the last year and a half. We've already achieved candidacy status, which is the status right before you get fully accredited. So within the next year, our locations will be fully recognized and accredited worldwide. So whether you're if you're coming to us, it's just you have your transcript, you have your growth transcript, and it would be recognized worldwide. So that will solve for that. And those are our younger years, so the accreditation is being done for ages 1 to 12. And what we're doing with this um, middle school program that we launched this year is that we have the core academics, so math, English, and science, that's taught online through a third party provider that is fully accredited. So children this way have, as kids get older, the stakes are always higher, right? And what curriculum you're following makes a big difference based on what country you're coming from. So what we realized is we need to give families the flexibility to be able to choose what core curriculum they want their child to do. So right now we have a partnership with Crimson Global Academy, which is one of the top 3 online schools in the US. They will be delivering the core academics during our academic studio period in a boundless day. And then the rest of the day, the other half of the day is what we call boundless discoveries, where the kids are working on place-based projects, going into the community, working on those soft skills, those core competencies. So we've built a model where the younger years will be fully accredited by WASC, and then the older years will also be accredited, but through a third party provider, and also gives the family the flexibility to choose which provider aligns best with their own academic philosophy.
Okay, so does that mean, for example, that the parents can choose between like the IB curriculum or the British curriculum, or how would that work?
Yeah, so we have like a list of we're in partnership with this one organization called Crimson that offers US and UK curriculum. And then we have another list of all these other online providers that parents can choose from if that best suits their list. So, there's a whole option of companies with different countries' curriculums where the kids can do those specific classes online. So basically, they could, choose a provider that we've partnered with, or we give them a reimbursement for the amount that we pay for that provider, and they can choose their own provider and do that provider during the academic studio time.
So some people they believe that AI will become so sophisticated in maybe just 1 decade that it will basically take away almost all the jobs we know today. Um, First of all, do you have an opinion of whether that's going to happen? And secondly, what skills do you think will be most important education wise in a society with so advanced AI?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very possible, right? You see the power of AI just right now. In 10 years, my God, I can't imagine how far advanced it will be. Um, I think it's highly possible. I think the skills that our children need the most is, first of all, learning how to learn, right? So how can you be a constant learner? How can you adapt? How can you have that mentality, build that muscle that I'm going to learn whatever's in front of me, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to, be hungry to learn it, because we don't know what the future is going to look like, and it's going to keep iterating. Jobs are going to keep changing, and they have to have that mindset, that mentality to learn and to pivot and to figure out what the next thing is. So I think learning to learn, having a love for learning, is going to be so important, and then being able to build that muscle, that neuroplasticity to want to learn and change and shift quickly. And then that links back to all the soft skills we talked about before, right? That we're already kind of working on within this kind of lifestyle is resilience, adaptability, problem solving, how to be an effective communicator, how to negotiate, how to have financial literacy, how to debate effectively. All of those soft skills on top of that is really what's going to set people apart. That human aspect um, that I don't know how far AI will get with the human side of things.
No, it's interesting, for example, if you look in China, it seems like the VIP treatment in hotels are with humans. But if you want the basic kind of model, it will be with robots. So my own opinion is that sometimes we will like that human touch, and sometimes it will be very basic. It will be like when we go to the local cafe, it's just nice to be greeted with a friendly smile and a little conversation from a human. Of course, those jobs might not be very highly paid jobs. So I think there will definitely be a challenge of kind of pivoting, to more advanced roles if you want to keep making a good income. Um, I think the interpersonal skills and communication will become super important. Um, and I actually, I mean, do you have any thoughts on communication via social media? I mean, we do see a lot of challenges within social media where people actually they don't communicate very nicely. Um, because it's not face to face, I guess. Any thoughts on how we can educate the young people to be better prepared for that type of communication?
Oh yeah, very opinionated on that. I mean, even for my own son, I wrote like a digital kind of policy of what is allowed and what's not allowed and how you communicate. I think students, children need to realize that how they communicate, whatever platform it is a representation of them, and even though you're not face to face with somebody, how you communicate online, uh, is almost there forever, right? That content is not gonna go away. And there has to be a certain caliber, a certain language that you speak to because it is representing who you are. I think personally, social media, I look at differently than AI. Like social media has a lot of downsides. Like I don't think it's been given to children too young, and we don't know yet the effects that it has. And the studies that have come out shows that it has a huge negative effect on the mental health of our children and of our teens. And I hope we can find a way for the future generations to pull back on that because um, the impact it's having just on depression and suicide rates is because everyone's these kids and adults as well are comparing themselves to this fake reality, right, that's being presented online, and that's not the reality of our life. So I would love there to be a lot more, um, there will have to be a huge focus on digital citizenship and how to use social media and technology is so powerful, but it has to be used as a tool, not as your reality of life, right? And I think it's our job as parents, as education leaders, to make sure that there's a tremendous amount of focus on digital citizenship, how kids show up, how it's used, how they interact, and I think for the mental health of our future generation, it's a non-negotiable. It has to be there now.
Yeah, and I guess in traditional education, there's nothing that will help young people with that. I mean, I see a tendency that there's a quite high percent of people who are much more negative on social media than they would be in real life. For example, there would be comments on this podcast, and the people who would say, these questions are so stupid, or the answers are stupid, or this will never happen. I mean, there would be many more of those than if this was kind of a physical podcast with an audience, right? Yeah, then the questions would be much more positive and curious, I would say. So I think
For sure.
education needs to step in somehow and teach some best practices for how to communicate digitally.
Absolutely. It's people are hiding behind the screen, right? Because you're not interacting with anyone in a human capacity, so they feel safe enough to say whatever they want and to usually it's when someone doesn't feel confident in themselves that they feel they need to project, negativity to someone else. So I think there's so much digging that needs to happen there, but um absolutely, like it's even beyond negative comments, even just in like relationships, right? Our children are used to kind of building a relationship online, which is completely different than building a relationship in person. And building a relationship in person is so important. It like those interpersonal skills of, you know, hand gestures or body language or tone, eye contact. Those are skills that everyone needs to learn. And unfortunately, the more time kids spend on social media, they're not learning how to interact effectively with other humans. And that's why I think community is so important. Kids need to have a circle of people that they are hanging out with in real life, in person, on a regular basis so that they're off their screens or off social media and having more direct interactions.
So let's talk a little bit more about your future vision for education and for family life. Um, what do you see in a decade's time? Do you see Boundless being in every country, or do you have a strategy for how you want to expand?
Yeah, like what I'd love to see is Boundless, in these right now we're in wow destinations, right? Destinations that are so exciting to be in, somewhere you've never been and sound so exotic and beautiful. So I would always want to make sure we have like, a bucket of 15, 20 wow destinations that you can travel from. But I would love to see, boundless education centers and communities being built in major cities around the world as well. So like I'm from Montreal, Canada. I have family in Calgary, I have family in New York and Chicago. It would be amazing to have boundless education centers in all of those major cities as well, so that as a family, I can plug in and out, whether I want to be back home near my family or I want to live near my brother in Toronto for 3 months, or I want to come to a wow destination. I can easily plug in and out of any of these destinations without compromising my children's education or the community that I'm part of. So I would love to envision a world where there's a minimum of, 50 boundless locations in major cities and in wow destinations that people can easily plug in and out from. And, I'd love to imagine this world where more families are living intentionally, they're living um, in a way where their children are being educated in a meaningful manner. They're part of their children's daily lives because that unit is strong, and they're having these joint experiences, these shared experiences, around the world and back home without having to sacrifice, connection or quality. So um, I think the boundless model is something that we're building that could really reshape the way we think about school, work, and family life. Um, I don't think it's just like a fringe idea. I think it's really a growing global movement that will only get bigger, I hope.
Well, I guess in order to like really scale the model, there's also the cost side of it. I'm guessing. I just had kind of a quick look, and it does seem like you need a relative high income, right, to finance a lifestyle where you have maybe 4 or 5 locations during a year, not just the schooling costs, but also like living costs and travel costs. Do you have any ambitions or visions on like whether we can drive this cost down of this type of lifestyle?
Absolutely. That's always been kind of the goal from the day that we started. I would love to have a boundless scholarship fund. We actually kind of already have the workings of it happening in the background. It's called Boundless Horizon Scholarship Fund, where we would love to be able to um, have a scale of different tuition where we can offset the cost for families, who maybe can't afford as much to pay as much for this kind of lifestyle. I personally would love to, have education centers that have a mix of all different types of children. Inclusion and diversity is at the core of our mission. And right now, unfortunately, price is a barrier, right, to be able to live this kind of lifestyle. But I'm hoping that with this scholarship fund, once we're at a point where we have a lot of concrete data and that we can show the major impact this is actually having on children and on families, then I would love to target, impact funds and have them also support our cause so that we can get this kind of lifestyle into many more people's hands. That's the goal and the vision, definitely.
Do you think technology could play a part of this? I'm thinking the more advanced AI and virtual reality we have, the more you might be able to scale so there could be more student per teacher without compromising on quality.
Yeah, yeah, good question. I think with time we'll see like how effective, how does learning look? How effective is learning? How much guidance do they need? How much motivation do they need? Um, I think if we could get to that level, yes, I think we could scale down on costs a little bit and staffing. We would just have to really make sure that we have a solid playbook and system in place. Um, that's what we're working on now, right? And now that we're at this phase where we're expanding quickly, we're growing, we're making sure that we have the infrastructure, the SOPs, and the playbook so that's super clear what everyone needs to do to make sure that quality is, standard across all destinations. I think once we have all of that in place, then we can definitely figure out how to scale back and hopefully decrease costs.
So if you look at the families who are all in with you, I mean, is it mainly company owners or is it people who have jobs but that are not dependent on location? Or is it like just high net worth individuals who are taking a few years, to enjoy life? Or what kind of mix of families are you having?
Yeah, we have a mix. We have a lot of entrepreneurs who work for themselves and have the flexibility to work from anywhere. We have, employees who are working for companies that are work from anywhere policies. We've had, doctors who are doing telemedicine, nurse practitioners, who are able to service their clients from anywhere around the world. We have, other families who are taking a sabbatical, so they've left their job for a year and want to travel the world with their family. um, I would say that's the spread. A lot of consultants, who are taking on projects for a few months and then just enjoying themselves for another few months. So I would say that's the kind of breakdown of families that we have.
Interesting. Are you thinking about kind of different hybrid models? I mean, maybe inspired by COVID, we saw a lot of online teaching. Um, to what extent do you think the future will use online as an option, combining it with meeting and having friends in a class environment, but that part of it would be online and from home?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, like I mentioned, that's the model we're working on for our older kids, for our middle school age kids. It's a purely hybrid model. So where half is, project-based units, and then the other half is with an online provider. Um, it's working well with that age range right now because they have the autonomy, the independence to kind of manage their learning with the framework that we've built around. Now, to me, the question is, how young can we go to implement that model, right? So right now we're working with 13 to 14-year-olds. Um, I'm still on the fence on like, do we want a 5 and 6-year-old, learning everything online? I don't know myself if there's enough data or proof to show that there are no side effects to being on a screen for an extended period of time at a young age. From the research I've done, by the time you're 13, 14, there's no harm. There's no harm done at all. I'm still waiting to see, what research comes out for us to establish how young do we want to bring that hybrid model down to. We are looking at bringing it down to our 10 and up kind of category, um, but not sold yet on going any lower than that at the moment.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I've also experienced doing online teaching with kids below 10, and you kind of need to sit next to them, otherwise
Yeah.
they will kind of drift off. Um, so how about the parent involvement? I mean, it's very often that you actually see parents need to be involved in the traditional school system, helping with homework or even hiring tutors, to kind of optimize the learning. Um, do parents or are they also part of the learning here, or is all of the education done within the school?
Yeah, no, we believe in, really getting rid of that gap between the family and the education system. Um, Personally, I've always felt like there's so much children can learn from people beyond just their teacher. Teachers are amazing. I have so much respect for them, but everybody could be your teacher at the end of the day. You don't need an education degree to be able to inspire, to be able to teach. And I think that's actually a huge missed opportunity in our existing in our system, because when somebody speaks to something that they're truly passionate about and it's their zone of genius, that passion is inspiring. That passion is what kind of plants a seed in somebody when you hear someone speak so passionately. And a teacher cannot speak passionately about every single subject in the world. So we actually, in our model, have a session built in. It's called Endeavor Time, where we have the members from our community come in and speak to our students about something that lights them up, that is their passion, so that our children are exposed to so many different people who can offer different perspectives of things that they're interested in. So we really try to bring the parent into the classroom as much as possible, more as an inspiration to ignite a flame in different areas that might not be in the curriculum, right? There's not Every area is not necessarily covered in a curriculum. So how can we leverage the inspiring people who have overcome their fear, and have them inspire our youth as well? So that's already built into our system. um, and then in terms of, we don't have much homework in our model, so there's not too much that kind of falls on the parents in that sense. But we try to have an open door policy, like come in, observe, share your thoughts. How can you contribute? Our community is amazing, so they're always coming up with, even just with Endeavor Time, amazing things to bring into the classroom and share with our student community.
Have you thought about having kind of expert lectures? I mean, I'm kind of thinking of when I'm doing this podcast, I'm talking to many interesting people, like experts within AI, experts within longevity, experts within geopolitics, for example. Um, have you thought about a model where you could invite these people, just like I invite them to my podcast, to do kind of short seminars on different subjects?
I have actually. I haven't. It hasn't manifested itself yet because we're focusing on other things. But yeah, I've definitely thought about that. Like, how amazing would it be to bring in specialists, or like kind of masterminds, and have this masterminds rotate between our different locations and work with the kids in that specific area. So kind of having mastermind cohorts, where maybe you have an AI specialist or a longevity or a mindfulness specialist who's coming to that specific location. We do have that actually already for our community. So we have had a few cohorts where we implement a thematic cohort. So we will kind of market it. We'll bring on a specialist in, let's say, well being, and that person will be part of the community and offer their services on a weekly, daily basis to everyone. So, like for instance, in Couture, where I am, last cohort, we had a well-being specialist that was here, and every day he was, after school during drop off, everyone would drop their kids off, and he would do a meditation with everyone. He would do a full workout session, hold people accountable, encourage them to eat healthy. So it was kind of a thematic community cohort. But I would love, always wanted to find a way to implement that into our education model where we have these masterminds, maybe flying from destination to destination and having like a focus week on one particular subject from a mastermind around the world. Just haven't gotten there yet, but in the works.
Yeah, I guess online could probably solve a lot, because I
True.
mean, many of these masterminds would probably be willing to offer an hour here and there, but
True.
may not be able to fly them around the world.
That's
But I
true.
think that there's definitely so many opportunities in education. So kind of just a final question: how do you see all of this playing out in terms of the scale in alternative educations like this in the coming decade? I mean, are you expecting a revolution, and are you expecting also that there will be a lot of resistance from the traditional system to kind of hold on to what we have?
I think, yeah, initially, I think there will be some resistance. I think, I think there's already resistance right now. I think people are going through those emotions. I think after COVID, like I said, that was a moment, where you're gonna say, "Am I making a change or am I going back?" So I think there's already that kind of some people jumping in, all in, some people going right back. I think there will be resistance for sure. It takes time to change people's mentality and mindset and programming. It's kind of like there's a great unlearning that needs to happen. There's a deschooling movement that needs to happen where people are just unlearning everything that they've been programmed to do. Like I'm living this lifestyle, and even me sometimes I'm like, my mind goes back to, well, the way I was raised and the way I was educated, and you have to. It's an ongoing process. But I think if there's more people like members in our community, members like yourselves, people that listen to your podcast that are thinking differently, that are thinking outside the box, the more there's momentum. You already feel it. It's something's roll. The snowball is rolling and it's getting bigger and it's getting bigger. And I think it's just a matter of time. I don't know how long, but there will be a major revolution in education, in lifestyle, family living. I think borders are going to, I hope, open up, and more people will look at themselves as a global citizen of the world, and just look at everything completely differently.
But do you think will the model change the way it did with, for example, Blockbuster? I don't know if you remember this story, but Blockbuster Video had the opportunity to buy Netflix, and they said, no, it's not really a good business model. We are more than happy with what we're doing, and of course the story goes that Blockbuster went bankrupt. So in some industries, you need major disruption. You need somebody to come in and offer a better business model, uh, because the current businesses are simply not willing to change fast enough. Do you think this is the case for education?
I mean, education is something that's so deeply rooted in, like, it's not a company, right? It's rooted in government and legislation, and like at the core of every country. So I think it will take much more time to see that shift. But there are so many interesting education companies that are coming up that are showing an alternative way to educate and are now getting the data to support the changes that happen. Like there's an organization out of Texas called Alpha School that has built this 2-hour learning model where they claim that kids can learn everything they need to know in 2 hours on their AI platform. And as they ramp up a lot more data and a lot more numbers on the effects of this and the impact it's having, that that will is what I think will start snowballing. It's not going to happen instantaneously because, like we talked about, fear is at the root of education. That's why it's one of the industries that hasn't changed. All of the other industries have changed, education hasn't. Why? I think it's because there's so much fear associated to it. We're still living as if we're in the industrial revolution, and teaching kids as if they're in factories. So the more alternative education solutions that come up and can prove with numbers and quantitative data the impact that these models are having, the more it will catch on. But I think it is a longer haul than other industries for education.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, right? Because to prove with the data, you need time, right? You need to say, well, these students did better than average and they followed a non-traditional education. And of course, you cannot really have that data before they're a little bit older, and you can track how they're doing in terms of jobs and income and things like this. But definitely, I do agree with you that we will see finally a lot of change in the next decade. Well, thank you so much for coming. It's been
Thank
very
you.
inspirational.
Thank you. It's been great chatting.
That was the Mindblowers podcast. How we choose to educate our kids might be the most important decision we make for their future. For decades, the school system has barely changed, but that's shifting. New models like Boundless Life are opening up fresh possibilities, and with AI and virtual reality on the rise, we may be on the edge of an educational revolution. Thanks for listening, and see you soon.